Oh, hello there. Today I'm going to talk to you about devil horns. This hairstyle ushers in the end times. Some of us, the sons of man, the sons of a god who played with clay and created little claymation figurines who defied him, and he had to go down to the earth and rise from the dead and still walks as an undead among us, thinking what we think, watching what we do. And he knows that when the horns come, it is time to prepare the apocalypse. Now I've broken it down with these markers on this wall to try to explain to you exactly what's going on and how to ride out the final days. Let's have a look at the wall, shall we? First, let us observe that I have placed a contraption on the ceiling so that I can see the back of my own head on that screen right there. It rotates and attaches from the ceiling. So let's bring it around behind us so that we can have some light on the wall of information here. Now, you don't need to have the devil horns. You could instead decide to shave your head. The devil horns blend with your hairpiece and allow brushed forward look, and it looks stupid, as evidenced here. Now the problem with this is nobody thinks this looks good on its own. However, if I'd shaved off my devil horns, I could kind of get away with having a fairly decent hairstyle, which is basically just some dude with a shaved head who's balding a bit. That's what shaved-headed people do who are balding, and they kind of blend in with society. But if you don't want to be bald, if you are ready to make the jump, make the plunge into having a full head of hair again and defying nature, then these are the instructions you will need. Please, let us continue. So, in terms of shave type, one is devil horns, as shown here, and second is a shaved head. Now what I intend to do is, of course, cover all of this with shoe polish, which has been done for thousands of years. Well, ever since shoe polish was invented. But there's something better now. So what we do now is we find roadkill, or we dig up corpses, and we take their hair and make it into something like this. This is an existing hairpiece that I've got, and for the remainder of this video, I will be wearing this on my head until I find a more modern replacement. This one's getting a bit old and tattered at this point, but I have pre-taped it, and I'll explain how that was done later in this video as I demonstrate with the new piece. So for now, let us just say the devil horns are blended in and a little bit hidden, as it were, so I can walk around with hair, and the public are none the wiser that the end times have cometh. Let's move on, shall we? If we look close up at what's going on inside the hairpiece, we will see that the roots are never bleached by the factory. When they're created as knots, they look like squashed ants. When V-loops have been used to create the hairpiece, they look like doll's hairlines because the roots have not been bleached. The only solution to these fake, ugly hairpiece problems is to bleach the roots at the factory. So close up, we're going to see problems in there, which I'm not going to navigate through now because I've covered it for 11, 12 or 13 years worth of hundreds of videos, and you can watch those at your own leisure. That is my logo and is printed in tattoo form on the back of my head. Now, let's have a look over here. The crown problem. Up here is a patoodlement. or sticky-uppy crown. It's caused by multi-directional V-loop stitching. V-loops are a poor man's way of tying in a hairpiece's hair. But because we want it to be nice and confined and quick and cheap to make, we just send it through and out the other side and just lock it down by gluing the underside of the hairpiece, which basically locks it down a little bit. But there's a lot of shedding. If only somebody would tie it in so it would be stable. Now this doesn't generally happen in hairpieces such as this because this is poly rather than lace. And we'll get to that in a second. A conformed crown is where the crown hairs can be brushed normally when stitching is tied in with knots. So when knots have been used to put the hairpiece together, one, there's no shedding, or there's less shedding, and two, you can kind of brush the hair in multiple directions. The thing is with V-loops, they are stitched in one particular direction. Now, as we all know, most people's hair goes forward at the front, and most V-loop systems are stitched in such a way that they favor a frontward natural brushing direction. However, when it comes to the back of the crown here, all the hairs tend to change direction. And a lot of hair companies who just don't give a shit will then just zigzag the crown in all directions, and that results in, that's right, patoodlement. And that's what we want to avoid. Moving down to another part of my lesson here, we've got the base type. One, we have lace, usually French lace or Swiss lace. French lace is thicker knitting material and supports more density. And Swiss lace is fine knitting material and only supports lighter density because the net is more open. Swiss lace and lower density hairstyles have generally been considered by everybody as the most realistic looking hairpieces on the market. However, when it comes to the glue or the adhesive type, there's no concealing the problems. On the one hand, we've got the ugliness of the roots that have never been bleached by the factory properly, and secondly, we've got the problem of all this terrible glue that doesn't ever work quite exactly as we would like. And so, Swiss lace would be perfect if these two things worked well, which they hardly ever do, and people generally end up trying to brush their hair forward to cover over the front hairline because it's generally always failing. And so Swiss lace really only looks good on day one. Poly or thin skin is a plastic hair base, and that's the one I'm wearing right now. 0.02 millimeter thickness, which is thinner than a piece of paper, is the thinnest on the market, and it blends with the skin easily. Whereas 0.08 millimeters, which is the thickness of, well, basically a piece of paper as well, is an average thickness. But it can create a hairline shadow right along the very front if you ever expose your front hairline. Now, because I have not recently glued this down properly and simply used old tape that was sitting on the hairpiece for a while, this is not very sticky anymore. And I will pray to the god of the claymation figurines that we are, that this thing does not blow off my head today, because I'm going to be seen in public. Now, if I press down hard there, and it was glued on nicely, potentially you would not see a line or a shadow created by the lip of plastic that sits over the edge of my forehead. And so other people would be convinced that this guy has a real head of hair. That's when you can hide your devil horns and blend in with society, ready to roll up your sleeves and prepare for the apocalypse. However, if you want to really blend in, if it's sticking out badly, or if it's got bad shadows because of this direction of sunlight or harsh interior lights, people will notice. In a lot of hair videos, people tend to lie and show one type of lighting, which is what I'll basically be doing for this entire video. Today I'm going to address two problems. One is itchiness, and the other is petoodlement, which is the bad stitching at the back of the crown. I like poly or thin skin base material because it's very easy to wash and apply glue to, etc. Lace could be the most realistic, so almost everything's perfect, but it does take a lot of maintenance and cleaning. Whereas poly is by far the easiest. Now, what's the benefit of having something like 0.02 millimeter thickness, the thickness of a piece of paper, versus 0.08 millimeters, the thickness of a piece of paper? The difference is longevity. More strength into the hairs being clamped between the glue layer and the plastic layer when they stitch in or thread the V-loops through. I'm going to go online now and find something that will solve the problem of the multi-directional stitching and to ease the crown problem, and also something that might potentially prevent some itchiness on the scalp. Come with me. So I'm really going to try to focus today on solving the crown problem and also maybe fixing up the itchiness and irritation. And over here we have a website called Lavivid.com, and I'm going to go through here and find myself a solution that may well do the trick. Let's have a look here. Savings. Oh, here we go. ZeoGuard, non-treated and zeomic treated. Now this has some silver ion technology embedded into the plastic, into the poly. I'm going to look at some that are skin hair systems here, and hopefully we'll find one that has ZeoGuard and also can fix the petoodlement problem of the crown. Go through them here. Attention, 72 hours only, up to 25% off if I register. I might leave that for later. Skin hair systems, 20% off. Oh, here we are. ZeoGuard. Now this one here, let's have a look. Zeo single knot Mirage antibacterial hair system. $215.20, 20% off, ends December 11. And it's now December 10, so I don't think I'll have published this in time for you to get any benefit from that saving. However, I do have a coupon code that might give you some savings. Let's just see what they have here. Now I would order that one, or decide whether I want the base and hair pre-cut or just the base pre-cut. Now for this, how would they know what my template size is? I've only just measured it and I'm not even quite sure it's the right one. However, when I do make the perfect template, I would email them and then send it to the address. I will find out what that is and put it in the description below this video. Now, let's just say I don't want it pre-cut at all and I'll just take it as is and I'll cut it all myself. Let's have a look here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. How much are you going to charge me? Right. So far, that's the price. Shipping is free. I guess that's because I'm ordering enough. And I will proceed to the checkout. And shipping protection. I'm not sure if I would select that or not. But that might give you some insurance in case they lose it. Right, now, discount code. I told you I had one. StickOnHair. As you can see there, StickOnHair. $1,317. Apply. Ooh, okay, there we go. $1,119. Just saved yourself about $200 with my coupon code, which I think is 15% off. And I think it's added on to that as well. So, yes, you'll get 20 plus 15% off. That's 35% off. Always look out for bargains and join their mailing list. Then what I would do is I'd go to pay, and then it would be sent to me. And, ooh, what's this? It's already arrived. Magnetic. All right. Lavivid ZeoGuard Hair, the first ever antimicrobial hair system. Zeomic. Please fill out this card and enclose it in the package when you return. Missing card or incomplete info may affect the efficiency of your refund exchange. Right, you've got a 30-day return and exchange card here, and I'd say they do not want you to mess it up before you try to get a refund. So have a look at it closely before you cut it to pieces or stick it to your head. This is color number 4, and that is the code for this particular hairpiece. Now, for this one, they have tied in knots, apparently. It's got the little Zeomic sticker there. I'm sure I can remove that. Nice. And so basically, Zeomic, I asked them about this, and they said, well, the Zeomic is infused into the plastic and won't really wash off because it's silver ion or something, and really, it just stays in no matter how many times you wash it. With lace, on the other hand, they've sprayed it on, and you have to keep spraying more, but they don't sell the spray. So if you get the poly version like this one, then yes, it will stay, and it will cause bacteria to not proliferate. They will simply die, and your head will be more itch-free and odor-free, which is very good. Now, I didn't have a template to send them at the time, and I'm still not happy with this one exactly here either. But I did tell them I wanted the hair to be cut for me. And so what they've done is they've cut it 2.5 inches at the front and 2 inches back and sides. What I first need to do before I put this on my head is cut it to my template size and then attach some tape, some ultra hold tape, as shown here, to the base, and then stick it on my head. Potentially I may also need to shave a large area out on top of my head as well, so that it all sticks nicely. The base of the Zeo single knot Mirage measures between 0.06 to 0.08 millimeters, which is a fairly thick or average-sized base, and it could cause a hairline shadow. Featuring a full thin skin construction employing the V-looping technique along the front hairline, ensures... So basically they've got knots all the way through all of this, and then there are V-loops along the front, using a CC type contour, which is fairly shallow and not very sharp. I think the A contour is the sharp one, and the C alone is very flat, and the CC is a little bit less flat. That kind of looks about right for what I would prefer in terms of a contour. They have cut off the front lip section of the plastic, which often makes putting on a hairpiece a bit more of a struggle, but you can order your hairpiece to be cut to your own template size if you send it to them, or they also have a pickup service to pick up your template so that you don't have to go to the post office. But you still have to make a template for them, and then they will put it in their library, and every time you order, they'll know what your template size is, and they'll cut it for you for a fee, and then they'll cut the hair to a style that you like, as well. Ensures a remarkably natural appearance, allowing for versatile styling such as slicked back hairstyles. That's very optimistic, Lavivid. Very optimistic indeed. To enhance durability and minimize shedding, single split knots are utilized throughout the rest of the base. This meticulous craftsmanship ensures longevity, surpassing that of a fully V-looped skin hair system. That's no doubt. As we've seen, V-loops basically just tug out if they're not clamped in properly. Moreover, the base of the Zeo Single Knot Mirage undergoes treatment with zeomic antimicrobial technology. This innovative approach effectively inhibits bacterial growth, fostering a healthier and more pleasant wearing experience. Say goodbye to discomfort and hello to confidence with the Zeo Single Knot Mirage. My God, I'm becoming professional. All right, let's take this thing off. Now, I've taken the headpiece off so we can see exactly what's going on with the back of my head. This is what happens when I just sit down on the back of a chair and take a VR headset off. It's called patoodlement, and this is entirely due to the fact that the stitching of these V-loops are all haggity-paggity and all flowing in different directions. Now this is all 100% V-loops here, and it blends nicely at the back. I should probably clean that up there, but I'll do that afterwards. So what I've got here is I've got the new Lavivid Zeo Mirage sitting underneath my template on top of my mannequin head. Once I put this on here, I can see that it's about the same size as what came straight from the factory. That's the back, as evidenced by the little Auschwitz tag there, and that's the front hairline. Apparently I can't see this, but along the front it's V-loops, and throughout the back and sides it's all knotted, which is something I never thought they could do. They've cut off the plastic around the front area here, but just to make sure there's nothing protruding at all, I'll just put a pivot pin in the top, and then rotate this and see if there's anything I need to chop off extra. Because I don't want little bits of plastic around the front, because that's called exposed base and it stands out like a sore thumb. You want your hairs to come directly from the front edge of the hairline, especially if you're going to attempt a brushed back look, which is what they said you could do with this piece. But they also said this is 0.08 millimeters thick plastic. Now, for my eye, I can't really discern the difference between 0.03, 0.06, 0.08, but I know it's thicker because it's 4 times thicker than 0.02, but I've just never seen the difference. I know it creates more of a shadow along the front under certain lighting conditions, which means you probably wouldn't trust a brush back look. The only time I've ever really trusted a brush back look were under the following circumstances. A Swiss lace hairpiece, brushed back, but with glue that was put on less than 2 hours earlier. So Swiss lace would have been perfect for television, but this is real life. I've got to live my life. I've got to walk around like this. So most people just say, don't bother with a brush back look. It's too hard. It looks fake. You're going to have a wall of hair. It's not going to blend. Some companies like to use graduation, which is less hairs put in, leading to the exposed base problem, so that doesn't work. The ultimate way to do it is to bleach the roots. And with lace, you can flip it and bleach them yourself, but with poly, there's no way in there to bleach it for us consumers, so we have to just trust that they will do it at the factory. And when I contacted them, they simply said, we don't do that. And so we're stuck with dark brown, medium dark brown hair up against pale white skin in my situation. All right? If you're blonde, if you have blonde hair, you don't have to worry about that problem. Your hair pieces probably look 100% perfect every time. Alternatively, you could have very black skin and very dark hair, and that's basically the same color, but most people who are considered black are brown, and therefore you would probably see it. In that situation, I'm not sure how well blonde blends against black skin or brown skin. I've basically been selfishly thinking of myself and my personal situation, but I think bleaching makes things more invisible. So blonde hair against black skin could potentially look okay. I've always assumed that to be so, but I've never tested it or seen an example of it. Even though 60% of African American women wear wigs or hair pieces. That's a lot. In fact, they're probably one of the biggest markets. So, balding men are probably the biggest market, I'm assuming, and then African American women, second biggest, I think. There would be African American men who also wear hair pieces, even if they have a full head of hair as well, just because they want to try having different styles. And I know that in the African American community, the barber shop is like the cornerstone of the chat, of the gossip culture and everything else. It's a meeting place, and I think they always want to do amazing things with their hair, and they always seem to look schmick and amazing when I see them in movies. But I don't go to America very often, so I'm not quite sure exactly what goes on in America. Right, now, I'm just feeling with my fingernails now because my scissors weren't able to feel any mistakes here. And it looks like they've done a perfect job, and I can't feel any lip. So, I don't think there's anything for me to do except just stick this on my head. But, you know, I haven't prepared my scalp. If we take off this one that's just held down by some weak glue from days of use, we can see that the tape is pretty much dried up, but it's not in bad, terrible condition. I mean, I could still wear that and remove the tape and redo it and so on and so forth. But for the purposes of this demonstration, I am going to put on this one instead. Now, this one here is much narrower. It only goes to there, like a very small curvature. The contour at the front hairline that I wanted is actually much wider, and I can demonstrate that by just placing this template that I made on my head. And I assume that the top of the top nub of my forehead when I raise my eyebrows is where it should land, and so that's where the front hairline goes, and then that goes out to the edges like that, and that's quite wide, and I feel like that is how the contour should land, probably. Now, I think with the one I've got here, this hairpiece here, it goes up more like that or something, right? Comes up higher. And a contour, apparently, from what I just learned, is more like that, and it goes down to a C, C is the flat one, and then CC is more like what I've got here, and what they say this one is here. Right, now going around the back of my head here, by the way, if you don't have a proper setup to be able to see the back of your own head using a mirror camera, you're probably stuck with using two mirrors, having to use one hand. Wow, isn't it amazing? In the reflection in the mirror here, it looks so much bolder than when you look at it like this, doesn't it? And it makes me think, should I shave just that and leave all the hair here to grow back? Well, I don't know. The problem is hair pieces, because of the crown problem, cause protuberance at a particular point. And as I cut off a bit of the front to make the contour as I would prefer, generally speaking, I'm bringing the crown from the hairpiece or the hair system that they've created further forward each time. And so now I've got a protuberance at the top center of my head, about there, instead of there where my actual crown is. But given that this one may solve the problem of patoodlement, I may be able to continue buying something more like this and shaving less deep so that the hairs flow naturally downwards from a certain point. Let's go back to this example I was about to demonstrate here. If I look in the mirror, in the handheld mirror, so I can see my own reflection, I can kind of see the back of my own head, but then I've only got one hand left to do everything else, and this is shaking. This is locked solid, and I can see the back of my own head perfectly clearly, especially as I move this beam around and see all sides of my head. Do you understand? So you need a mirror camera setup bolted to the ceiling of your bathroom with proper lighting. And I've given a lot of instructions on how to do this, but in summary, let me show you a little bit again. First of all, put that thing up there. 4 screws using toggle bolts straight into the plasterboard. All right? It's not even attached to timber. It's just 4 screws straight up in there. The toggle bolts widen and then lock as you pull it down and screw it in tight. This whole thing here detaches and can be put away, and then you'd be simply left with a little bit of silver sticking out of the ceiling. No big deal, right? Then you'd buy this bit, which I've put in the description below. Then this bit, description below. This bit is also in the description below. This thing in the description below, and that comes with a little holder for your phone. And then of course you want to have an iPad holder and an iPad, or you could use a phone and a tablet of some sort. And because iPhone don't send mirroring to iPads, I have to also use a power mirror, which I have subscribed to for 6 years for $99. I'm not sure what the deal is with Android, but this is very good. If you have a phone and a tablet, you can do this rather than this. All right? Evolve much? Good. First thing I want to do with this, before I put tape all over it, is wash it. Now I think you would agree there's a bit of a fear that zeomic might be washed off. The zeoguard, zeomic, I'm not sure what they want to call it, but some sort of silver ion spray or something that's embedded in here that kills bacteria might be washed away. But I contacted them and they said with poly it's infused into the plastic. So I am feeling safe about washing it. And you're supposed to wash these things when you first get them, get all the chemicals off from the factory, wash the hair and make it all nice and malleable and brush it into a position that you're happy with before you even begin. So I'm going to get some shampoo and conditioner and put it all over this and wash this under the sink. And then I'll put tape all over it and we'll be ready to just place it on. Now, like I've said, I'm not quite sure that this is a reasonable size template for me. Maybe I should be aiming for something a bit smaller. This goes the full 10 inches from there to there and probably about 6 inches side to side. Don't have the ruler with me right now, but it's about that, okay? Might even be 8 inches on this version, which might be a bit too big. But the thing is, I need the hair to brush in and flow nicely when I put a brush through it, and I want it to work perfectly. And so if I go too thin or if I start making it end just there, would that be as brushable? Would this hair density match this hair density, etc.? With a hairpiece, it's going to be the same density the whole way through, and so you're not going to have any mysterious problems. Also, regrowth underneath the hairpiece will become somewhat visible through lace or with poly, which is transparent. Okay? So I'm going to wash this, then I'm going to put glue or tape around the edges, just like I did with this other one. And I'm going to set this up ready to be placed on my head. Now I'm not sure if I'll shave this in advance because tape does actually stick to stubble, but it makes a crackling, crunchy plastic bag type sound whenever you touch it. Whereas if you shave it, that doesn't happen. And every so often, this does have to be shorter. You can't just have this length over the whole lot and then just expect this to just conform nicely unless you really plaster all of this down underneath. So if you want to just experiment for your first time and you've never put on a hairpiece before, go ahead and put it on, but please use tape, don't do glue. I've gone through years of suffering on your behalf, so you don't have to go through the experiences I have of trying to get glue out of long hairs that are attached to your head. There's a lot of pain involved. If you were ever bullied as a child, you know what it's like to have your hair pulled. And if you want that feeling for 2 or 3 hours as you get all the glue out, be my guest. But I would highly recommend that you don't, and you just use something like this, tape, which I always thought, how can that hold? It has no holding properties whatsoever. It's useless, and I'm a big sweater, so what the hell was I thinking buying it in the first place? But then over the years, it came good. Somehow. I don't know how. I think the problem was, I've only just recently started wearing a full topper, a full-sized hairpiece. In the olden days, I just used to wear a front partial. And so anything to do with tape would make it so that it was very visible along the front hairline especially. And it still is. Glue is much more compact and presses the hairpiece down exactly to the hairline, to the forehead. And tape, there's always little gaps and bits and pieces that are not exact. But it's easier by a long shot. So unless you're going for a brushed back look, which I may be going for today, just to prove whether or not, to see whether or not they're right about their theory that this is good enough for a brushed back look, I would generally just use tape and not glue ever again. But you can use glue. I might even use glue today, I'm not sure yet. We'll see. But definitely around the back and the sides, back, through the middle, and on the sides and everything, I will be using tape. It's only the front hairline that's the trouble, right? You saw how easy that this blended in with the rest of my hair around the back and sides, right? It's not even the exact same color, but it's fine, right? It's always the front hairline that's the issue, right? It's the front hairline that's the difficult part to get perfect. Now, making that all stick up and everything, because of betootlement and whatever, is always a little bit tricky, but you're better off having a wider area where this all blends in more realistically to your head, okay? And you really want to avoid that Marge Simpson betootlement if you can. And I'm hoping that this new piece will solve that. So I'll be back and I will try to have done all that stuff by the time you get back. All right, so I've just washed this with shampoo and conditioner and brushed it back, and then I tried to place it on my head. And I thought the next step is just put some tape underneath it all and just wear it. But when I put it on my head, I found this problem. Remember what I was telling you about squashed ants and doll's hairlines? Well, this one, which they claim could be fine with the V loops at the front for a brushed back authentic look, can never be deemed authentic when the roots are looks like jet black against white skin. The roots are highly, highly visible. And I've seen this with many, many hair companies before. In terms of the betootlement problem, the crown problem, it looks like that's been mostly solved, even at a short length of 2 inches, which is good. But this is still wet, so we'll still see. But, you know, in general, I think overall, the crown problem has been solved with this hairpiece. Let's look around here and look at this front. I'm going to go to the high detailed camera on the back of this phone so we can get a better look. All right, now, my hair is not this dark usually, obviously. Camera 1. All right, it's just that it's wet right now, okay? So they've cut it the way I asked, 2.5 at the front ends, just at the eyebrows, and then around the back and sides it is 2.5. But all through here, my God. What did we say before, kids? They have not bleached the roots at all. And so we are stuck with having to try to conceal all this at all times. The roots are massively, massively visible, not just throughout the hairpiece looking down into somebody's head, making it look like a Persian rug, but also along the front hairline, which is the most visible part of somebody's face. And so, how can I bleach all throughout here? Well, I can't. It's impossible. I simply cannot bleach it, ever. Now, what I could do is try to bleach along the front, and that will give me some respite from this shockingly dark stitching that's going all the way through. They might say, that's because you haven't shaved your hair underneath. And if you shaved your hair underneath, it wouldn't punctuate what's going on, and it would be less visible. Now, unless you think that I need to shave my knuckles at this point, your rebuttal is of no consequence. The roots are simply too visible and fake because they did not bleach the roots at all. Bleaching the front of this is the only way I could potentially get a realistic front hairline here. All right, now they have knotted into poly rather than knotting into lace. What does that look like? Does it look like a squashed ant or something new? The feel between 0.08 millimeters and 0.03 millimeters. The difference in feel is not necessarily the thickness in this case, but the bumpiness, and the bumps are obviously caused by the knots, which doesn't really matter, but it could cause some irritation on your scalp. And I wouldn't want them to thicken it to circumvent that. But what I would say is, now that they have created knots and completely probably solved the crown problem, which is a major fucking problem, right? Having patoodlement just all sticking up at the back because the V-loops are all fucking having to change direction at the crown, whereas this can all remain solidly knotted without shedding and all the other problems like that. If the roots are bleached, can be brushed back. And could potentially, if it was thin enough, blend with the forehead skin and look perfectly fine. Natural, real, like hair coming out of your head. All right, so I have pre-taped this hairpiece, and I've decided not to shave my scalp yet. I'll wait a few days, I think, let it grow back. I'm not exactly sure if this is the final size I shall be using. So I've taped it around the perimeter, one through the middle and two across. There'll be a lump there. Not going to change it, it takes too long. Alright, this will be the front hairline. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to mark on my forehead where I think the front hairline should start. With those comb marks. It really does feel like a cap this size. As you know, I have not trimmed it in any way. I have just taken this template and compared it to the size that came out of the box, which is 8 by 10 inches, and I have simply placed it down on my head without cropping it in any way whatsoever. Right, so we're looking out for the crown protuberament problem, the sticky uppy hair here, which is usually caused by a mishmash of badly sewn in V-loops. But because this particular hairpiece, this Mirage, uses knots, hopefully that problem will be gone. Now, I don't expect that I'll be able to create a brush back look in this particular hairpiece because the roots are too dark and I wasn't able to bleach them entirely perfect, and so I think if I brushed it back at the front it wouldn't look real, but I will try. But because I knew the roots were so dark, I didn't go to a lot of effort to make the front tape all the way perfect to the front edge. In fact, if I wanted to make it perfect, I would use glue along the front. But it's so much easier just to use tape and not deal with a front brush back look and worry about the front hairline, etc. In terms of the altitude here, I'm also inspecting my template as I review this hairpiece, by the way. You can hear that, right? That sounds like plastic, a plastic bag. That is because I have not shaved underneath the hairpiece. And so what's going on is, you know how a drum is a skin stretched across a surface and it causes vibrations? This is just resting on little hairs that are sticking up, right, all the way along. And so when you move the plastic along it, it makes a reverberation sound. If it was pressed directly against the scalp, the plastic sound would go away. It's just that I haven't shaved my scalp and done any scalp preparation yet. But if you don't care about that, because most people will never notice that. You will when you're brushing, but that's about all. You can have simply a shaved head and go ahead and put a hairpiece on top. Obviously, if you have a shaved head, my hairpiece goes all the way down to here. on both sides. So that area there would be really short, but it might work well if you have a hairstyle that could somehow blend that down to 0 again. And then when you take it off, when you walk around, you don't look like a fucking moron, like with horns, broadcasting that the end times are coming, or are here. Alright, so just do a loop, have an orbit, have a look. I feel like the betoodlement problem has, well, it's wet right now, but it's only 2 inches long, so it should have enough sprawling to jump back up if it really wanted to. So I think in terms of the crown problem, I feel like this hairpiece, which is the reason I got it, solves that problem. Whereas a full lace, this is a knotted poly piece, the first I've ever seen in my whole life. It seems to solve the problem of betoodlement, the crown problem. Every full V-looped piece I've worn has caused a massive amount of crown problem, sticky uppy crown right here. And as I move it forward, further forward, because I didn't like the contour that came from the factory and from other companies, etc. As I moved it forward, and you understand, if they give me an A contour and I want a CC contour like this is, I have to chop off that front little bit of rectangle. Now they generally place the crown stitching 7 inches from the front hairline. My actual crown is 7.5 inches from the front hairline. But when I chop off that bit there, that's another half an inch or an inch, so we're now pushing it forward to like 6.5. So then the betoodlement happens there, whereas my crown is actually there. Not that I want betoodlement at all, but if I did have betoodlement, I'd want it at the crown, because it's just ridiculous to have some pineapple leaves coming up the top of your head. But this solves it. Also, this is 0.08 millimeters, which is more robust, and this hairpiece, according to their specs, lasts for 3 to 4 months, whereas thin 0.03 millimeter lace poly V-loop piece will last for 1 month. Not because the plastic is stretching and ripping, but because the V-loops have not been tied in and they just shed. This one is less likely to shed. Now they have put V-loops along the very front here. But because there's no bleaching in the roots, it kind of looks quite unnatural. It's forced downwards in a way, and it won't let me brush them back. Usually there's more malleability, more play with the brushing at the front hairs. It could be that they're short, because I asked it to be cut down to 2.5 inches at the front, but they're definitely springing down. I would say somehow the knots behind the V-looped hairs are pressing and forcing them forwards, or the V-loops are simply so tight they want to stay forwards, and therefore they can't be brushed back. If it was long, I would have leverage, but they're only 2.5 inches long, so there's not really any leverage. So there's no brush back look you can have from this hairpiece, from what I can tell, unless you keep the hairs really long. By the way, if you see movie stars with that beautiful hairstyle at the front and it's still short at the back, that's because if they didn't brush their hair, their front hairs are about 6 inches long or 5 inches long, whereas the rest is only like 2 inches long, and then they coif it. It's a trick of the trade in the film industry. That's why they have perfect hair. You've got to watch these 1930s movies where they're saying, "Oh, you want to fight?" Right? And then you can see their hair flops out, and it's really long. They look like a punk, even these debonair gentlemen from the olden days. So, I would say At the moment, I haven't shaved underneath, so it's not perfect, but the brushability at the front, trying to push it back, especially at this length, is not going to happen. So I'll continue to wear this as a brushed forward look. The price is good, especially with my coupon code, StickOnHair, 15% off. Buy 6 of them, but you do get 3 to 4 months, and that could save you some money. In fact, if you were looking at a solution because you want to save money, you probably do want to look at hair pieces that have longevity, 3 to 4 months rather than 1 month. You don't want an antique hairpiece that's 100 years old that lasts for 1,000 years because it's so robust using monofilament base types or something. We're all here to find hair pieces, not hair wigs, okay? So we want at least the front hairline to look somewhat realistic. Now, in terms of realism, if we really do push it back here, I'll come in for a close-up, but I'm not able to really pull it back. The plastic here, not bad, in terms of the way they made it at the factory. There was no lip remaining. They cut it off perfectly after I ordered the haircut, which is something I definitely recommend. In some of my previous videos, you might have seen me struggle to try to cut the back and sides and everything of my own hair, or go to a hairdresser and they don't know what they're doing because they've never cut a hairpiece before and they don't understand the rules. 1.5 inches is the shortest you ever want your hairpiece to be cut, because otherwise it will look like a doormat if it gets too short. Now you might have seen, well, there are some hairpieces that are only that long, and I don't know how I've done that. I don't know how they made those. Send me a link. In fact, if you ever have a suggestion about something, comparing something to something else, always provide a link. It's obvious. Don't just describe something in general, vague terms and expect everyone to research it. You must provide a link. It's your job as a commenter to provide a link, okay? Yeah. When this dries, if it goes sprawling, which probably will, mostly because my natural hair is so buffy and it's going to stick out the sides here, rather than get a haircut, I'll probably continue dyeing it because I have greys starting to form on the sides. When I use hair dye, it actually softens the hair and straightens it a little bit magically. So that is my solution for these gigantic horns that stick out the sides of my head at the moment. Because when I make it short, then it doesn't all flow together. A lot of people with curly hair are very tempted to simply cut their hair really short before the curl begins. But then you don't get that side brushing, and then if you have long hair on top and short sides, it doesn't blend nicely. I know it looks a little bit punk or a little bit modern, maybe you might say, but if you want it all to flow as one unit, you can see here that it does blend better when I keep those side horns in place, even though I look like a very weird creature when I don't shave my head. Ideally, I would love to simply shave my head so I don't have to keep these ugly horns. So if I ever walk around without it because I can't be bothered with a hairpiece, or I've got a girlfriend and she knows I change between my bald head and my hairpiece, and I don't ever want there to be an ugly middle look that I don't like. Ideally, you would want to have a shaved head and just stick on a hairpiece over the top of very short stubble. And the only problem with that, it's not that it doesn't stick, it just makes a bit of a plastic sound, like a plastic bag on your head when you brush it, okay? I also recommend this hair length. When you order, 2.5 inches at the front should take you down just to your eyebrows, depending on your forehead size. I think my eyebrow begins at 3 inches when my eyebrows are down and ends at 3.5 there. So 2.5 is good, because the longer the hairs, the more they separate up here, and then you can see bits and pieces of mistakes like glue and unbleached knots and other problems with the hairpiece and everything. So you're better off to keep it a little bit fluffed at the front maybe, or short enough that it doesn't separate and it doesn't get in your face and it's annoying you and everything else. So even if you were exercising with hair if it's shorter than your eyebrows, it's never going to go in your eyes, is it? And then also along the back and sides and everywhere else on the hairpiece, it's 2 inches, okay? Which means that I've grown my hair here around the sides and back 2 inches. That takes about 3 months from shaving your head to get back to 2 inches. So if you want to shave your head or if you want to have horns, you kind of have to choose. But I can tell you that if you're always going to be in a private space with a good mirror, with proper lighting and a proper mirror camera and everything else, because you're not a Neanderthal using a freaking handheld mirror and with one shaky hand while trying to do all of this with the other, you will drill holes in your ceiling, shove some toggle bolts in there, put the little attachment, and then build exactly what I've shown you, and click on those affiliate links in the description below to buy the components you need so I get a little bit of money for it. But it's not just about me. I'm really concerned that a lot of people out there are using a handheld mirror to see the back of it and sides of their own head, and it's just stupid. When you've seen what I've built here, it is almost like a prerequisite for doing this. The other thing you'll need is a mannequin head and an iPad holder and an iPad or a tablet of some sort that communicates with a phone. It's just so much easier to send information from a phone to an iPad than having some DSLR camera or something exotic. In the beginning, when I first thought about doing all this and renovating this bathroom, I thought I was going to get a one-way mirror, put a camera behind it and all the other things and build it all into the walls so I'd have professional cinematography going on behind the mirrors and everything. But it simply wouldn't transmit easily between one device and another because cameras simply aren't built to contain all of that capability like a phone is. Right. Anyway, I hope you like it. This is from Lavivid. Yeah. In the coming days, when I feel more energetic, potentially, I will get under there and I'll shave it all off and attach it nicely. Thanks for watching.